The film begins with a glimpse into the future, 2024 in Philadelphia, where things, as with most movies providing a glimpse into the future, do not look good. The city seems consumed by terrorist attacks and rioting, while fire, smoke and screams loom about large in the air. All of this soon subsides into a vision as we move backward in time to 1988, where we enter the lives of Officer Thomas Lockhart, called Locke by his colleagues, and his pregnant wife John. A mysterious hooded figure wanders through the city. Meanwhile, a pianist, a chef and a bus driver go about their usual evening routines until they all begin to bleed from the orifices in their face and die simultaneously. Shortly after, the bus crashes. Locke is about to start his shift, but before heading out, he prepares a quick breakfast for Jean. After meeting his partner Maddox, they head to the scene of the bus accident, where Locke's brother-in-law, Detective Holt, is already on site. Upon inspecting the body, they find fragments of the driver's brain scattered on the ground and 3 unusual puncture wounds on her neck. They discover the same disturbing pattern with the pianist and the chef, brain fragments and 3 puncture wounds. Later, at the autopsy, the coroner revealed that the wounds were deep injection sites affecting the vertebrae, but the toxic substance used remains unidentified. Locke and Maddox then grab a bite, and Locke buys a bracelet for Jean. Their dinner is interrupted by a call from an officer who has discovered another victim with the same 3 puncture wounds, but this one is still alive. They rush to the club, where Holt arrives for questioning as well. They learn that this victim was attacked by a black woman wearing a blue hoodie and covered in blood. Before she can provide more details, she dies in the same manner as the others. The police start interrogating every black woman in the area and, with some witness help, create a composite sketch. Locke and Maddox eventually stumble upon the suspect by chance. Her name is Raya, and she flees into a subway station. The cops follow, missing the radio announcement that Jean is going into labor. Locke finds a futuristic weapon on the ground, similar to the one Raya used for the injections. Maddox is the first to encounter Raya, but she overpowers him, breaking his leg before escaping. The commotion helps Locke locate them. He aims his gun at Raya but hesitates when she speaks in cryptic terms. Raya knows his name, says this is where it happens, congratulates him on his new daughter and apologizes for Maddox, claiming it was unintentional. Locke, unwilling to listen, tries to arrest her. Raya overpowers him and cuffs him to a bench. Remembering he still has her weapon, Locke strikes her with it, causing her to fall back and die as a train passes by. Believing the case is closed, Locke leaves the station only to be informed by another officer about Jean. Rushing to the hospital, he learns from a cop that Raya has no ID or fingerprint matches, leaving her identity a mystery. The only clue found on her was a set of strange keys. The officer also requests Locke's revolver because Raya had a bullet from a service weapon, which is odd since no cops fired their guns at the crime scene. A nurse then informs Locke that Jean is having complications and is hemorrhaging. He rushes to her and puts the bracelet on her wrist, but it's too late. The doctors later inform Locke and Holt that while the baby is safe, Jean has passed away. 9 years later, in 1997, Locke, now a detective, took the day off to celebrate his daughter Amy's birthday. Amy has worn her mother's bracelet since infancy, and every year Locke gives her a new charm. Their first stop is the cemetery to visit Jean's grave. Locke is surprised to see someone else has already left flowers. They plan to go to the zoo, but Locke receives an urgent call and leaves Amy with another officer while he investigates the latest crime. Maddox, now limping, is also on the scene and insists he wasn't the one who left flowers for Jean. The call is about another victim with 3 puncture wounds, and since it's the anniversary it seems too coincidental. This time, the victim is a political professor and the same mysterious poison has been used, which still eludes identification. Holt, now a lieutenant, joins them and mentions he didn't leave flowers for Jean either. They check security footage and see someone in a hoodie similar to Raya's. The police consider it a copycat case, but Locke is skeptical and takes Amy back to the station to reopen the investigation. Although the case was closed with Raya's death, Locke decides it's time to piece together the clues. He sends the keys for analysis and learns of 2 more victims with the same wounds. He stays at the station, canceling Amy's birthday plans. Despite exhaustive searches, no connections between the victims are found. Locke becomes increasingly concerned when he realizes the copycat has an injured hand like Raya's, a detail that was never made public. Test results reveal the keys belong to an aircraft common at small airfields made in 1996, which is perplexing since they were found in 1988. Locke heads to the only local airfield with such a plane, leaving Amy with an officer. On his way out, he encounters Dr. Rao, who notes the case's alignment with his research on lunar perigees and time travel theories, but Locke and Maddox dismiss his claims. At the airfield, Locke finds it closed but notices a light in the building. He sneaks inside and suspects the clerk is being held hostage. Before he can act, Raya appears, looking unchanged by time. She forces Locke to drop his weapon and orders the clerk to restrain him. Using the clerk as a shield, Locke secretly calls Maddox to inform him of the situation before being tied to a chair. Afterward, Raya demands the plane keys. When the clerk goes to retrieve them, he draws his weapon for defense, but Raya quickly knocks him out and seizes the weapon for herself. Suddenly, she is startled by Maddox appearing behind her and accidentally shoots him, killing him unintentionally, which clarifies the apology she gave Locke 9 years earlier. A backup team led by Holt is arriving at the airfield, so Raya drags Locke with her into a plane. Locke loses consciousness and dreams of Jean before Raya wakes him and tells him to stop pursuing her because she's doing this to save lives. She explains that every 9 years, when the moon sets, she can return, but only for a short time. She doesn't want to elaborate further because Locke needs to return to his daughter, but since he refuses, Raya pushes him out of the plane and into the water. Locke swims to shore and finds the wrecked plane, but Rhea is nowhere to be seen. The next morning, after Holt reprimands him for his recklessness, Locke tells him they won't find Raya's body because she's likely a time traveler from the future. In 2006, Locke is digging the grave of a man named Harold Nowak, whose death had been attributed to addiction, but Locke discovers the 3 puncture wounds on his skeleton. Obsessed with the case, Locke has left the force and become a private investigator to unravel the mystery behind Raya. He now lives in his car with a radio tuned to police frequencies to catch any leads. Locke has also started researching the moon and its energies while searching for Dr. Rao, who has disappeared. After checking Novak's name on a list, Locke visits the widow, who reveals that Novak ran a white nationalist militia group. Novak's ex, Heather, used to work with him, so Locke notes her name and requests a list of group members. This list reveals connections to many of Raya's victims. Later, Locke picks up Amy from school. She now lives with Holt and his wife and disapproves of her father's lifestyle, though she shares updates about her life, including a boyfriend Locke doesn't remember, despite having met him before. Locke drops Amy off at home, giving her a birthday charm, though Amy stopped wearing the bracelet long ago and Locke doesn't notice. Locke then visits Jean's grave before meeting Holt at a cafe to discuss new clues. Locke believes Raya is eliminating members of the militia group using an advanced poison from the future that can be activated remotely. She is moving backward in time while the rest of the world progresses, which explains why Locke has seen her die and then reappear unscathed, and how she knew about him. Locke only wants Holt's help in obtaining Heather's address, but Holt dismisses the time travel theory as absurd. Determined, Locke pretends to be emotional and admits to poor mental health, apologizing for his actions. Holt hugs him and promises to help find a therapist, giving Locke the chance to steal his badge. Once Holt leaves, Locke impersonates him and calls the station to obtain Heather's information. When Locke arrives at Heather's home, she is already dead, with the same bleeding and puncture wounds. Suddenly, Raya emerges from the house, and Locke tries to shoot her, wounding her hand with a bullet similar to one found on her deceased body. Raya escapes on a bike, prompting Locke to steal a truck and follow her to the same beach where the plane crashed. Entering a sewer pipe, Locke discovers where Raya hides her time machine, but before he can act, she activates it and escapes. When Locke exits the sewer, Holt and his team are waiting to arrest him. Dr. Rao observes the scene from a distance. In 2015, Dr. Rao completed his work on the poison used by Raya, testing it on pigs. Locke was correct. It is remotely activated from a computer, explaining the simultaneous deaths of all the victims. Rao's lab is near the beach with the sewer pipe, and the security cameras show Locke camping out because he knows it's the anniversary and Raya should appear. While waiting, Locke receives a call from Amy, who expresses a wish for him to be present when she has her baby. Before he can react, he is suddenly knocked out. When he awakens, Locke finds himself in Rao's van with the dead pigs. Rao explains that Locke's investigation led him to understand that Raya is saving the world and represents the culmination of his research. Rao plans to keep Locke locked up for a few days until Raya completes her mission, then promises to release him. Locke rejects this plan and attacks Rao to stop the van, leading to a crash. Locke escapes and heads to the beach, where Raya arrives after time traveling for the first time. Locke intends to kill her to prevent her from traveling back, ending the murders and his obsession. Raya reveals that she has known him her entire life and that Locke was the one who encouraged her to take this role. She removes her bracelet, explaining that it belonged to her mother, which makes her Locke's granddaughter. Stricken with remorse for causing his own granddaughter's demise, Locke admits that he killed her in 1988. He urges her to return, but she sorrowfully reveals that there is no possibility of going back, and she was aware when she volunteered that it was a one-way journey. Raya asks Locke to return home and spend time with Amy while she completes her mission. She briefly consoles the now weeping Locke before leaving, abandoning the charm bracelet behind. In 2024, an aged Rao activates the injections, eliminating Raya's targets and erasing her timeline from existence. A voiceover by Raya explains that when she was 9, a man parked a van loaded with explosives on a crowded city street and detonated it, killing 11,000 people. This triggered a series of events that led to a civil war, claiming millions of lives and leaving the nation in ruins. Nevertheless, thanks to Rao's invention and Raya's sacrifice, the bomb is never detonated and the conflict is averted. Back in 2015, Locke arrived at the hospital and reunited with his family. The film concludes with Locke holding an infant Rhea, who is wearing the charm bracelet. With that, the movie ends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.